I read that you are really making a point of bringing awareness that there shouldn't be, and to ease or erase the stigma of PTSD.
Wow. Yes.
And I know that's a big subject, but
It is a very big subject, and I've been doing it for several years now. In fact, I was even doing it or trying to do it before the announcement came out that I was receiving the medal. Every time, because I had issues with myself after the firefight,
right.
and every time somebody said I had a disorder, and I questioned it. Well, you have post-traumatic stress disorder, and I was like, well, why is it a disorder? There's nothing chemically wrong with me. I just went through a firefight and saw a lot of things. And it got to the point when the announcement was made, I kind of understood why veterans from past wars and present wars were feeling horrible about themselves, because I felt horrible because I was chastised. I was put down. I was ostracized. If society labels you with a disorder, that means there's something wrong with you.
Okay.
So if you believe that there's something wrong with you and the counseling and the medication and all that stuff doesn't work, well, if you're not being healed and you're going through so much pain, then the only option is to end the pain, especially if you've been in combat. You've seen death. It's almost like you lose your fear. In the end, it's like not that you fear life or fear death. You're just kind of, you know what, I'm done. I'm going to make the next step, and they do it. So if we can remove the bad part about PTSD, if we can remove the D, you don't have a disorder. You just have stress from something that happened in your past. In fact, the most common form of PTSD is not combat. It's a car accident. This is like over the world. Loss of a loved one. This is a huge trauma that affects you. I just recently got my Associate of Science in Firearms Technology, and they required that I take a psychology course. And it's actually quite recent, within the last, 10 or 12 years. The Diagnostic Statistical Manual states that within 1 month, if you have a trauma, and you react to it in certain ways, it's called acute stress disorder. And then after a month, it's called post-traumatic stress disorder. And it's like, okay, so question, who decides how long it takes for somebody to mourn? Who decides what something is acute or something is post or whatever? So some forgive the language, egghead somewhere who pretty much spends their entire life in books and writing reports, who've never really seen the world or whatever, decided that, okay, well, this is the standard, so we can label it, so we can put everybody in a little box.
Sure.
And then that little box got advertised by mainstream and social media. Now, every time somebody does something stupid, they say, well, he had post-traumatic stress, or she had post-traumatic stress disorder. And it's all complete nonsense.
Lumped into a big gray box.
Well, post-traumatic stress, the best definition I found, which doesn't really exist, it's something that I figured out accidentally, because I was sitting in an interview somewhere, and they said, well, what is it to you? And I said, well, it's an instinctive, reflexive response of your body and mind to recall a traumatic incident in order to avoid repeating it. At no point is combat mentioned. As no point of race, gender, color, or any of that ever mentioned. It's just who we are. Now, it's a learning instinct. For example, as a child, 4 years old, mom or dad is cooking on the stove, and you reach up to see what's going on, and no, don't do that. It's hot or whatever. And the parent keeps on slapping your hand away because they want to protect you from that trauma. So when the parent's not looking, you reach up and touch the hot pan. Now, at that age, of course, you don't understand the difference between ouch pain and life or death pain. So like a kid skins his knee on his bike, the whole world's ending, so you go nuts. And then, the parent's there, and they console you, you heal. Sure. And then 30 or 40 years later, 20 years later or whatever, every time you walk by a stove, what do you think?
Yeah.
Don't touch that pan, it might be hot.
Right.
You may not remember being burned, but you do remember that don't touch the stove.
Well, and I will tell you, just while you were talking there, so a year ago December, I was in a car accident.
Mm-hmm.
And we stopped hard for traffic in front of us.
Mm-hmm.
The guy behind us did not see us, was doing 70 and hit us and picked us up and lifted us over the car in front of us, and we tumbled and tumbled. I didn't have a scratch on me.
Mm-hmm.
every window shattered, everything. My brother-in-law had a bump on his head and bit his tongue, but he was relatively unscathed as an outward appearance. Neck, back, everything pretty tore up. But I was warned the next day. A friend of mine said, PTS is, and I'm going to take on your way of saying it here because I like that. The PTS really is a real thing with people in car accidents. So you need to look out for that. And to this day, if I'm in a car, whether I'm driving or I'm a passenger, if we're stopping fast or hard on the freeway or even on a side street, I tense up and I start checking mirrors.
Yeah, you're waiting for that impact.
Yeah. And so...
But there's nothing wrong with you.
No.
You learn from something that happened.
Yeah, I'm looking for it.
Yeah, you're looking for it. Just like veterans coming back from the war, they see a box on the side of the road and they think IED because they got hit by an IED. Or when a man or a woman is walking in a dark area and they look for somebody that might attack them because they've probably been attacked before, or they know somebody who's been attacked. You don't actually have to go through a trauma, a physical or whatever trauma, to experience post-traumatic stress. You can actually have a loved one that did it. For example, car accident thing. If one of my kids got into a car accident and I didn't, but I heard about it and I saw them in the hospital or something like that, every time they get behind the wheel, I've got that trauma and I'm thinking about it. Or every time I'm behind the wheel, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I hope they're okay. Or I randomly call them up, because, you feel... You live vicariously through your kids or your loved ones. You empathize, and that causes PTS.
Yeah, and that makes perfect sense. And I think about my kids now. I got a 20 and an 18-year-old, and I think about my little 18-year-old girl, my little girl.
They'll always be our babies.
Yeah,
I don't care how old they are.
She's at college, and I think about my time at college, and I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, watch out for this, look out for this, because I'm thinking about it, because it happened to me, and so you're reliving some of your traumas through her. But why is loving your kids or worrying about your kids, why is that a disorder?
In that case, I don't think it is.
No, it's totally natural. It's how we grow. It's how you learn how to ride a bike. You can't just ride it. You got to fall over. And then you're like, oh, well, I'm going to correct this next time, and I'm not going to do it. And usually it requires some pain or some fright, and then your body and mind learns. So, but these doctors, these people, they call it a disorder, and then the media thinks, oh, you have a disorder, so you have an infectious disease, or the old term was you're going to go postal, or you do something stupid. So, it's not that. Now, I've been speaking to several counselors throughout the years on how to change it, and they says, the only way to change it is to change the way people view things, and that's with a diagnostic statistical manual, and that's what everybody follows, and that's what everybody goes with. And I was like, well, I guess that's where my goal is, to change it. And I just think that removing the D is a stepping stone to remove the stigma. The way it's presented in the media, because everything has to do with information. I
can't say I disagree with that at all. I think that's a great idea, and why not?
Yeah, and when people are like, well, I thought I had a disorder, and it's like, you know what, that's because you were told, you were misinformed. You have a trauma that you're learning to deal with. You're learning that, you don't live in a bubble.
Yeah, nobody's life's perfect.
No, exactly. But people want to think that normal is normal. Abnormal is normal.
Right.
There's evil in the world, and bad things happen. If you live your whole life with a silver spoon or a gold spoon, and everybody provides for you, your trauma, no matter how big or small, is actually a lot worse than somebody who's grown up in poverty, because they've experienced steps of trauma. So something like the stock market crashing, it's no big deal to them. But for somebody who relied everything on the stock market and they never lost any money, or they always had car service, they might actually, drink a bottle of Jack and fall out with a 45.
There you go.
You never know.
You really don't. And we were talking about PTS, and we were talking about all civilian life and military life, how it kind of crops its head.
Yeah.
A group that I work with, I did a podcast with the founder in Detroit area in Michigan, is Wyandotte, Michigan. It's called Downriver, so South Detroit. a lady started a group there, and they got a kind of part-time therapist. I'm probably saying that wrong. It's a therapist, but not
Counselor.
Yeah, but they're not necessarily there to be the true therapist role. They're having once a month now, and they don't care if it's one person or 20. It's a PTS focused discussion. Just come in and talk.
Yeah.
No rules, no nothing. He's kind of moderating so things don't get out of hand, but it's not like you need to talk about this unless here's how we're going to shape it. It's trying to just get people in to get in and exactly what you're saying, I think, is to de-stigmatize and say it out loud.
The best treatment for post-traumatic stress is communication. It's forcing yourself to speak about the moment, therefore reliving it. And when you do that, because I have to do it at least once a month, when you do that, your body and mind aren't trying to force something on you. Individuals that suppress their memories or say that didn't happen or something like that, they're the ones that receive the nightmares. They're the ones that receive the flashbacks or the flinches because their body and mind are trying to remind them something that actually happened and what's really there. So a lot of nonprofits, they create veteran outings. Now, the veteran outing will work as long as the veterans are in a safe environment or anybody that's experienced a trauma, as long as they're in a safe environment to where they're with individuals that have shared like traumas, then they communicate. But in the end, the fishing, the hunting, the horseback riding, that's all a distraction. People are like, oh, I'm going to go skydiving, and it's to treat my PTS. It's like, actually, no, just skydiving is a distraction from your PTS.
Okay.
True treatment exists when you choose to acknowledge it. And this is not supposed to be a happy thing. It's gonna suck. If you choose to relive it, if you choose to experience it or express it, then other people understand you better. But every time you do that, it's like you have a festering wound. You open it up. It's going to bleed out. It's going to clean itself. But like all wounds that haven't been healed, it's going to do it again. And you have to keep on doing that. Well, eventually it starts to scar over, but it's still always there. You just know how to deal with it. The misconception is that, if we give these guys and gals this outing where there's a lot of fun and everything else, then it'll help them. And it's like, you know what? You're right. They're with like individuals, and they're having fun. And they'll be smiling, and they'll be having a great time. But in order for true healing, you have to go through the pain. You have to force yourself to push through. And as you do that, you figure out how your body and mind reacts to these stimuli, and then you can learn to correct it. So the proper treatment for PTS is either peer counseling, individuals that shared like traumas, or just having close friends and family members that understand what you're going through, or at least you've explained it to where when something is arising or there is an issue, they know exactly what to do to assist you.